muggy Miami afternoon in 2016. The tranquil setting of Bayside Park was ripped apart by a scene of unmatched carnage that culminated in an explosion. The onlookers fled, the wounded wailed for help, and first responders and local police began to flood into the area. It would take days to process the scene, weeks to canvass all the potential witnesses, but they had to act now and close everything off fast. Metro homicide detective Edmund Strode was working a horrific crime scene when he got the call. There was the headless body of a young boy that had been found in a dumpster in a nearby alley. Some quarter-mile away, Vice Detective Jake Muntz was in a blood-spattered boathouse, trying to recreate the events in his head, trying to envision what could have led to such violence. He got the same call. It was the captain, Lou Castro. He was recalling all detectives and all support personnel. The uniformed Miami cops were to remain to keep the cordon around the area, but everyone else had to leave. And it wasn't just the local cops either. The branch offices for the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, and Homeland Security had also been pulled back. This was now officially a DRO investigation, and their authority superseded that of everyone else. And these two very different men, two very different kinds of cops, Ed Strode and Jake Muntz, walked away that day with the same thought haunting them: that there was too much blood for this to be over, and that they had to work that case, no matter what. It was a thought that would bond these two men, and eventually destroy them. Welcome to Magic City. This is Miami Slice. Drinking whiskey in the kitchen and telling scary stories around the fire. Music, monsters, and mayhem. Killers, cannibals, and cults. Fearful fiction and furious fact. Tall tales and terrifying truths. This is a scary home companion. Jake Muntz was an old-school cop, through and through. From his pot belly and his ill-fitting suit, to his receding hairline and his reluctance to leave tips, Muntz worked Vice. He'd worked Vice for so long it was hard to remember anything else. Childhood? Nah. Friends? Nope. Family? Hell no. Between 20 years on the streets of Miami and an equally long love affair with gin, there was nothing left of Muntz but cop. He worked Vice, which is the shit detail of all shit details. But he did the best that he could. Muntz would take down pimps, but not arrest the working girls. He would smash a drug ring, but leave the street runners alone. On the other hand, he did like bribes, and would shake down the working girls and the street runners for handies and nickel bags, respectively. Like I said, a cop through and through. It being a weeknight, Muntz was at his favorite watering hole. He wasn't hard to find, especially for a fellow detective. Edmund Strode sat down 2 stools away and ordered a soda water with lime. He said, "Captain tells me you're still sore about getting pulled from the case. So am I." Muntz finished his drink and called for another round. "So what are you doing about it then?" Strode responded, "I'm here, aren't I? I've been digging around since that day, and I've got more questions than ever." Muntz chuckled. In the 3 weeks since the attack, he had thought about little else. He said, "The dead man in that boathouse? I've seen pictures of him before, when a reporter was looking for him. Let me ask you, Strode, have you ever heard of the Bookman?" With that, the two detectives moved to a quiet booth in the back, where they spent the next 3 hours speaking in hushed tones and becoming increasingly convinced that something sinister was afoot in the heart of Magic City.
Good morning, Captain. Cap.
Oh, hell no. It's too early for this. I don't even know what it is, and it's too early.
It's about Bayside. Not the bombing, something else.
Something's wrong, Lou. I could feel it in my gut. You gotta let us work this case. Unofficial.
Off the books. I don't care. I'll use personal time.
I said N-O. No. This ain't coming from me. This is the DRO. They're called Deep Red Ops for a reason. You cross them, you lose your job, maybe a lot more.
Fuck the DRO.
Aside from the use of profanity, I would say something similar. Listen, Captain, this is about a lot more than a homeless woman blowing herself up. I found a decapitated 10-year-old kid. It's connected. Guess what? 3 blocks away, they found an old man with his arms chopped off. The Metro cop got pulled from the case, but he says the dead man was Dr. Neil Wallace.
I don't know who that is.
The Herr specs. Cut people's guts out. Tied them together.
So what?
So that woman with her face cut off in the boathouse, her name was Corinne Lee. She was a suspect in the split mouth attacks in Atlanta a few months ago.
I'm starting to lose my patience with this shit.
I know the DRO took away all the street surveillance footage, but you saw it, right? You know that was obviously Rory Silk leaving the scene.
The same Rory Silk that went missing, with about 8 gallons of human blood in his art studio.
Silk was handcuffed and being led away by a man with an eye patch who looked a lot like Jack Miner.
The same Jack Miner that chopped up all those pretty girls at the sorority house. Closed casket Jack.
Captain, you know this is no coincidence.
The goddamn serial killer convention.
I know people make fun of me for working part-time at Foot Locker, but I like it. You know why I like it? Because I don't have to put up with this dumbass bullshittery like this. A serial killer convention? I'm gonna get my coffee, and when I get back, you both need to be gone.
You know why he really works at Foot Locker, right?
I don't care. Why didn't you mention the bookman?
Wouldn't have mattered.
Okay, fine. So then what's next?
You know what? The hell with him. The hell with this department, and the hell with the DRO. I need to work this case. I owe it to someone.
Muntz wasn't supposed to know about the bookman, or Corinne Lee. Before the DRO had showed up, he had fingerprinted both corpses on the sly, and then taken the print cards with him. The media had been calling it a failed terrorist attack, but no one on the force believed that. The old homeless woman who had lit herself up, she was a local bag lady and a firebug, and everyone had known her for many years. She was always muttering something or other about an effigy, and everyone had taken to calling her Effie. Effie was a wingnut, and it turns out that she wasn't nearly as harmless as they all thought. But There was no doubting that Effie was too far gone around the bend to ever be a politically motivated terrorist. What she did, it had to have been on account of those other people in the park. There were too many notable villains in one place for it to be a coincidence, and no real cop could possibly believe otherwise. Muntz had called in a few favors. He had those prints from the bookman, but he couldn't run them through the conventional databases, not with the DRO watching. Meanwhile, Strode had been spot surveying the apartment of the Haruspecs, Neil Wallace. Although the place had been quiet, on this night, there was a light on in one of the windows, where it certainly had not been on before. Quickly, Strode called Muntz, before taking gun in hand and sliding up to the front door. The door was shut, but it wasn't sealed, so he nudged it open with his boot. The DRO had not only tossed the place, it looked like they had taken a lot of stuff and cleaned up all the blood. But for some reason, they had neglected a calendar on the kitchen wall, one with big glossy pictures of children playing with puppies. On the square for the date, 2 days away, it read, Hurricane Preparedness Meeting. Strode flipped back through the calendar and saw several other dates marked the same way. He was snapping pictures of the calendar when he heard the bathroom door squeak open behind him. In a dull metal flash, the camera was gone, and Strode's fist was once more full of Glock. A thin man was bolting for the front door, his eyes full of panic, lugging a heavy canvas backpack over one shoulder. He ran. Strode gave chase. Panic sprinted down the hall. His feet barely touching the floor, he was running so fast. But Strode came after him, full tilt boogie. The perp took the stairs 6 at a time and blasted through the fire escape into the alley behind the apartment building. He ran down that alley, just in time to see a car cross his path, blocking the entrance to the street. The bulky form of Jake Muntz got out, and now this perp found himself trapped between 2 guns. Gently, he set down his handheld video camera and his backpack and raised his hands in the air. Once they had him cuffed and secured, they started to question him. His name was Dharmesh. He was a YouTuber. He made videos for a channel all about serial killers and investigations of their crimes. Dharmesh said that word had leaked online. 2 different serial killers had been murdered in Miami on the same day, and he felt compelled to investigate for himself and his viewers. His story checked out well enough. It's not like they could call it in. But his ID was valid and his video camera was filled with local crime scene footage. As to how he had found this location, Dharmesh admitted that a website called the Ghastly One's Nightmare Forum had been full of chatter the last few days, after 2 addresses had been posted from an anonymous account. One of those addresses was here, the place where the Haruspecs had been murdered. The other was a flophouse hotel room, allegedly the last known location of Corinne Lee, the serial mutilator called the Woman with the Split Mouth. Using the eyepiece, Strode reviewed some of Dharmesh's footage, until he saw a hotel room with a wall covered in maps of the Florida coastline. One of those maps caught his eye. It was labeled Hurricane Preparedness. Strode asked him, "What do you know about hurricane preparedness meetings?" Dharmesh shrugged. "Fuck that," Muntz said. "Where's this hotel room?" They gave the man back his camera. Even if they wanted to arrest him, and they really didn't, they couldn't. This investigation was entirely off the books. So this poor schlub of an internet geek who reeked of comic book ink and carried a velvet bag of dice on his belt, they just had to cut him loose. They took their own cars to the Skid Row boarding house. Muntz was well acquainted with this place, even though he didn't know the particular subhuman mouth breather who was running the front desk. This guy told the cops that the woman who rented the room had paid for the month. She and her friend always wore surgical masks, and that's all he knew. Muntz was debating whether he should bribe the guy or pull his gun and threaten to beat the shit out of him, but then the captain called. "Come to my office, and I mean now, or just mail me your fucking badges and never show your faces again."
Captain, what's the problem?
Shut the fuck up and sit the fuck down. You guys have done it now.
Cap, come on.
Did I stutter? I just got a call from Special Agent Handel. You all know Special Agent Handel? Well, neither did I, until now. He's with a DRO, and now I'm on his radar. Do you know what it does to my blood pressure to know that a DRO agent is watching me? Do you?
I think I do.
Shut up, Muntz. Why? Why all this?
Because Michael Morehouse.
Who?
Michael Morehouse. That's the name of the man shot dead in the boathouse. They called him the Bookman.
Ha! He ain't the Bookman.
We ran the print of the John Doe. They came back to Michael Morehouse. He was on vacation with his parents 18 years ago and went missing from a resort in the Dominican Republic.
This 12-year-old kid, he sneaks out to smoke a ciggy after his folks go to sleep. Never seen again. Not until 3 years ago. Now he's here, driving a boat for a gang of a goddamn serial killer convention.
We know there are hundreds of stories about the Bookman. It's all myth. But he became the myth, Captain.
I know the stories.
Look, we ain't saying the Bookman story's real. But
It is real. I know all the stories. I also got one of my own, outside my family. No one knows this, but I've seen him up close and personal. He's real. I was shit. I don't even remember 6, 7, maybe. All of us piled onto this rickety-ass little boat. We were out there for days. Went off course. I don't know. Little kids don't know shit like that. Then another boat came out of the fog. One man on it. Haitian. Long dreads, scars on his hands and face. I don't know who he was, but the grown-ups did because they all got scared. Mom threw me in the water and made me hide under a tire so the man didn't see me. He said he was called the Bookman. If we wanted to pass, we had to give him something. Someone. They gave him my cousin. He was a teenager. I don't think he knew what was happening. The Bookman took him away. We never saw him again. And the point of this goddamn story is that I have seen the Bookman, and the dead man in the boathouse ain't him.
What if he isn't the Bookman, but a Bookman?
for me, it ain't about him. Lou, it's about Ginny.
I figured as much.
She had pics of the bookman. She took the damn pictures herself. Cap, it's this guy. The same guy she was chasing. That's the man in the boathouse.
Jake, who are you talking about? Who's Ginny?
Ginny Silver. She was a local reporter. We were a thing for a while. What a firecracker. She was obsessed with the Devil's Triangle. Something she called the Breach. She wrote books about it. And the bookman was part of that story. I don't know if he had anything to do with her disappearance, but if this could lead me to any information about what happened, I just gotta see where it goes.
You should go to the Bayside Vigil tonight.
You should, but first we have one thing we've got to do.
As soon as they left the station, Muntz and Strode went right back to the hotel, to the room rented by the woman with the split mouth. They found it just as it had looked on the YouTuber's video. It hadn't been touched at all, not by local cops, certainly not by the DRO. The place was virgin. They both wanted to go in and look around, but Muntz thought someone should watch the door. Strode stood outside, keeping an eye on the quiet street below. It didn't set right with either one of them that this YouTube geek got information from the internet that apparently the cops were still entirely in the dark about. Who the fuck had posted it? Especially if the authorities still didn't know about it. One quick glance told Muntz that this was the mother lode. He was floored. There was far too much data here for the old vice dick to process it all at once. It would take a week at least to go through all this. There were names, contact numbers, online handles, written on maps from all over Florida, with dozens of little X's and check marks scrawled across them, leading out into the waters of the Devil's Triangle on a series of nautical maps. It looked as if Corinne Lee was trying to organize something that she called hurricane preparedness. She had been getting dozens of people lined up into one place for a series of meetings. Meetings that corresponded with the dates on the calendar of the Harrowspecks. To another cop, on another case, in another city, this might look like a terrorist cell preparing for a big attack. To Muntz and Strode, they knew it wasn't that simple. This was a cell of serial killers and their acolytes. But what they were coordinating, it was impossible to tell. And then Muntz saw one particular map. It was unlabeled, but he recognized the layout immediately. Corinne Lee and her friends were going to target the lavish, secluded estate of Lila Ambrose. By this time, so late in the evening, they knew it wouldn't do any good to call the captain. Strode and Muntz had to show up on his doorstep. They wanted to keep it off the books, but at the same time be sure that someone they could trust would know what happened if they didn't come back from what had to happen next. This info they had found, they couldn't sit on it, not even for a night. On the drive over, Strode took a closer look at the maps they had taken. His eyes narrowed, his brow bunched up, and his lips moved a little bit as he read. Strode was not particularly great with academics, but he could see patterns. They just jumped out at him, which is what made him a natural detective. He told Muntz, "There's one spot marked on 8 different maps, just outside of Dade County limits, right on the water. It's some kind of marina or wharf, maybe? This is where they're holding the meetings." Muntz parked across the captain's front lawn and leaned on the horn until the porch lights flicked on. Castro emerged holding his service weapon. Muntz got out of the car, holding a map.
Is that?
Yeah, Lila Ambrose's estate. I know it anywhere.
How do you know that?
She hosts the policeman's ball for Miami PD and Dade County sheriffs every year. So what do we do with this information?
That ain't it.
We think we know where the meetings are being held. Whoever is putting this together, they have a piece of land just north of the city. Maybe it's their staging area.
Why are you telling me this now?
Because they saw Hurricane Matthew is supposed to make landfall this time tomorrow.
It's called hurricane preparedness. They aren't moving on a set date. They're planning the attack for the next big blow.
We don't want to do cleanup this time. We want to stop any more people from being hurt before it happens. I don't know what's going to happen, but whatever it is, we need to shut it down.
You guys got a plan?
We've got an address.
You consider raiding the gun locker at the station a plan?
God damn it, I'm in. This is too important to leave in the hands of Jake Muntz.
The thing about Florida, all of Florida, even Miami, is that no matter where you are, no matter how highly populated it is or how brightly lit it is, you're only ever 2 turns away from the backwoods. Florida is a piece of America built on inhospitable swampland. And just past where the streetlights end, there's wilderness. The 3 cops rode in an unmarked police SUV, armed to the teeth. Once they'd left the main road, Muntz cut the headlights and drove by the little slats of moonlight that fell through the bands of the oncoming storm. He parked in the tall grass beside the dirt road, a 1/4 mile away from their objective. This was the wharf that Strode had seen on the map. It was a series of short, sturdy docks next to a pair of old, decrepit warehouses, surrounded by a chain-link fence. The 3 cops proceeded on foot, guns in hand. There were no guards, but the gate was locked. On the other side of the chain link, they could see a handful of cars and trucks parked near the end of the larger warehouse. They moved down the fence line. It didn't take long to find a tear in the chain, and they quietly slipped through. Midway down the side of the larger warehouse was a steel fire door recessed into the ground. And it was a dark enough area, far enough away from the cluster of cars, that the cops felt they could slip into the building unnoticed. The winds whistled and wailed through the chain link. Beneath the humidity was just a hint of unnatural chill, a portent of the high-pressure system that was bearing down on them. None of these cops were stealthy. We're not talking DRO kill squads or SWAT team specialists. They were just middle-aged cops. That they slipped up to the building unnoticed was solely because that no one was outside looking for them. Cement steps descended towards a steel emergency door that was slightly ajar. Beyond that was an antechamber that was a landing in between floors. Half a flight of steps went in either direction. Strode went down. Muntz and Castro went up, creeping towards the next door and the main floor of this cavernous building. Muntz pushed it open, but stopped when the door was only opened a crack. They saw that the room beyond was full. Well, not full, but a lot more full than 3 cops could handle. There were 24 or more, and that was just what they could count through the crack. These people were gathered in a loose group around 2 men standing above them on a dais. Beside these men were neatly organized tables of weapons in front of corkboard walls covered in maps and photographs. One of the men was tall and strikingly handsome, with a stone-cut jaw and a lion's mane of golden hair tousled over his broad shoulders. And the other man was... God damn it, Muntz kicked himself. The other man was that YouTube geek from the crime scene, Dharmesh. The handsome man was addressing the group. He said, "Everyone is still distracted by the explosion. But we aren't, are we? Despite our recent losses, we remain focused on our objective. The priest with the red hands believes in us. The island believes in us. I believe in us." Dharmesh has been laying out breadcrumbs in town. If there is anyone snooping around about us, we'll find out soon enough. How could it matter? By this time tomorrow, it'll all be done. We will have won and taken back everything that woman has stolen from us. Dharmesh leaned in to whisper in his ear. Oh, yes. Also, Dharmesh brought gluten-free kelp chips and vegan avocado corn salsa. It's down in the break room. Downstairs, Strode was just entering the break room. Although never in a million years would he have ever thought to call it that. Nor did he notice the kale chips and corn salsa. He was too distracted by the archaic gym equipment. Metal and wood and leather contraptions of bizarre complexity. Then, as his eyes adjusted to the shadow, he saw the people bound to these bizarre contraptions, locked inside of them, and began to understand what he was looking at. This was a sex dungeon. Instead of using cages for the captives, this demented cult had people bound on these frameworks and constructs, locking them into place with chains and cuffs and leather straps. 5 different young adults, male and female, who had been whipped, beaten, tortured, and locked into sexually suggestive positions that kept them exposed and vulnerable for the most foul kinds of abuse. Strode was so moved by the plight of these poor wretches that he holstered his gun and called out for help from his partners. He started trying to let people go, cutting knots, releasing cuff locks. He pulled out mouth guards and speculums. So many speculums. Muntz and Castro arrived, and both stopped short in the doorway. "Help me," Strode told them. Together, the three cops released all 5 people. 3 of them couldn't even stand up, and the other 2 weren't much stronger. Muntz offered them the car keys, but Strode said, "No, we have to get them out of here and bring help." Muntz checked the gun in his belt and pumped the shotgun in his hands. "These motherfuckers have to pay," he growled. Castro tried to cool him down. "Yes, they do. They will pay. But we can't take them all on. Strode's right. Let's get these people out of here. Let's get them medical attention. And let's call in some backup." They moved slowly down the hallway, up the half flight of steps, and out the emergency exit. Outside, the handsome man and Dharmesh and about 30 other people were waiting for them. The only members of the group that didn't hold guns were holding wicked-looking blades and implements of mutilation. "Oh no," one of the victims said. She snatched the gun out of Muntz's belt, stuck the barrel in her mouth, and blew off the back of her head. And it was like a starter's pistol. After that, everything went pure fucking chaos. The other victims collapsed trying to run or crawl away as best they could as the crowd of cultists surged forward. The cops opened fire. It was bloody, but it was short. The numbers were just too overwhelming. Castro went down first. A glancing bullet cracked his skull and laid his forehead wide open like a sunset. Muntz went down shooting. He notched 3 headshots on cultists before taking a hunting blade in the side. It bisected his emaciated liver, and he crumbled. Strode shot and kept shooting as he retreated back into the building. He slammed the steel door closed, but didn't have time to reload his gun before they came down upon him from the top of the stairs. They slashed at him, these unseen assailants, in a whirlwind of fist and blade. Strode defended himself, but after a few seconds he felt woozy from all the blood that was pouring from his defensive wounds on the hands and wrists. 2 of his fingers had been completely severed, and his forearms were partially flayed. He was barely conscious when the handsome man pushed open the door, leaned down, and studied him. He's still alive. They're all still alive. Good. Good. Take them to the break room. Dharmesh said, "They're shot full of holes, Nick. What's the point?" Nick grinned. staring at Castro's head wound as they carried him past. Well, that's the point, Dharmesh, isn't it? The extra holes. Now let's all of us go down and have some fun before these pigs bleed out. Thank you for listening to another episode of A Scary Home Companion. Find the show on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or contact us directly at ascaryhomecompanion@gmail.com. Better yet, get down to brass tacks and sign up for the Patreon. Early release episodes, bonus content, so much more. This story piggybacks off of the 2-part episode called Apex Predators. So if you'd like a little more background detail on the events of Bayside Park, that's where you're going to find it. Guest voices this time provided by Dan Lilly, Griffin Peters, Barret Daniel, and Buck Rogers. If those names sound fake, it's because they are. Check out the episodes called Squatchmen and Ghastly House of Horrors for more of their voice work. The show was edited and produced by Jeff Davidson, featuring killer music by Herr Doktor with Miami Call, Solid Gold and Illusions by Miami Slice, Not Feeling the Vibe by Caballo, and the theme music by Chelsea Oxendine. But wait, we're not quite done. Let's see what story is coming next time.
For decades, there have been stories. A gateway in the middle of the Devil's Triangle. A gaping wound in the side of reality that looks out over hell's vast black ocean. The scientists and researchers of the Flayed Lady never thought they would find it. They thought it was a fool's errand. They were wrong. Now they're trapped in the middle of the sea, drifting ever closer to hell itself. Who will survive? And what will be left of their sanity after the final voyage of the Flayed Lady?